Story, Dad. You're not staying here tonight, my daughter said, keeping one hand on the front door, as if I were a salesman she had already decided not to buy from. I looked past Rachel's shoulder into the house I had wired, roofed, refinished, and paid off over 26 years, and saw my son-in-law Derek sitting at my dining table with his parents, and a woman I didn't recognize. The woman had a leather portfolio open in front of her. Beside it sat a glossy brochure showing a white-haired couple walking beside a fountain under the words Brookhaven Senior Living. A rolled survey map covered half the table, and one corner showed the outline of my 12 acres in red ink. "What do you mean I'm not staying here?" I asked. Rachel glanced behind her before lowering her voice. "The evaluator needs to talk to us without you getting worked up. Derek's parents are helping us sort out what comes next." I stared at my daughter. "What comes next? For who?" She pressed her lips together. Derek stood and walked toward the door. "Calvin, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Just get a room somewhere. We'll talk tomorrow." It was my name on the deed. My truck was parked beside the garage. My late wife's roses were blooming beneath the dining room window. Yet my daughter and son-in-law were telling me to sleep in a motel because strangers needed privacy inside my home. I could have pushed past Rachel. At 68, I was still 6 feet tall, still strong enough to carry a spool of 4-gauge cable up a ladder, and after 42 years as an electrician, I had learned that some problems needed to be shut down immediately. But I had also learned something else. When a breaker trips, you don't keep flipping it back on until the panel burns. You find out what is pulling the current. So I looked once more at the senior living brochure, the survey map, and the unfamiliar woman writing something while pretending not to watch me. Then I nodded. "All right," I said. Rachel's shoulders dropped with relief. Derek actually smiled. "Thanks for being reasonable." I smiled too. "I'll be very reasonable." Then I walked back to my truck and drove away. I made it less than 2 miles before pulling into the parking lot of a closed garden center. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but inside I felt the slow, cold pressure that comes when humiliation turns into suspicion. Rachel had been my only child. Her mother, Elaine, died 4 years earlier after 39 years of marriage, and Rachel had been the one who sat beside me in the hospital after we turned off the machines. I had trusted her with a spare key, then with the keypad code, then with more of my life than I realized, because grief makes ordinary help feel like rescue. 18 months earlier, a burst pipe ruined the rental house Rachel and Derek had been living in. I told them they could use the finished rooms over my garage until repairs were finished. 6 weeks became 4 months. 4 months became a year. They bought furniture. Derek moved tools into my barn. Rachel changed the grocery delivery address. At first, I liked the company. Then, small things began shifting. Derek started calling the barn our shop. Rachel told me which weekends would be inconvenient for my fishing friends to visit. She replaced the keypad because the old one was unreliable and never gave me administrator access to the new app. I still had a physical key, so I ignored it. I had spent my whole life solving bigger problems than a door code. 3 months earlier, Derek asked whether I had ever thought about selling the back acreage. I told him no. A developer had been buying land along the new bypass, he said, and 12 acres was a lot for one old man to maintain. I told him I enjoyed being one old man with 12 acres. He laughed, but Rachel didn't. She said, "Eventually somebody has to deal with all of this." At the time I heard concern. Sitting in my truck now, I heard something else. I took out my phone and searched my email for anything from Brookhaven. Nothing. Then I searched the name of the county clerk because the word evaluator had begun bothering me. Halfway down the results was an email I had skimmed 2 days earlier because I assumed it was jury duty spam. The subject read, "Notice of Hearing." I opened it. My mouth went dry before I reached the second paragraph. A petition had been filed asking a judge to appoint my daughter temporary conservator over my financial affairs and property because I allegedly showed progressive cognitive impairment, unsafe decision-making, memory disturbance, and vulnerability to financial harm. The hearing was in 12 days. Rachel was the petitioner. Derek had submitted a supporting statement. The document said I had begun getting lost while driving, had failed to pay property taxes, had left a stove burner on overnight, and had become increasingly hostile when family members attempted to assist. I read the page twice, then a third time. I had not gotten lost. My property taxes were paid automatically every October. I cooked maybe twice a month, and my stove was induction, not gas. As for hostility, apparently asking why I was being kept out of my own home qualified. Near the end was a request that Rachel be allowed, if appointed, to arrange appropriate housing, manage real property, and take necessary steps to preserve the respondent's estate. I looked through the windshield at the empty garden center and finally understood the brochure on my dining room table. They weren't discussing whether I needed help someday. They were planning what to do with my life after convincing a court I could no longer run it myself. The next morning I was standing outside the county courthouse before the doors opened. I did not call Rachel. I did not call Derek. I didn't want explanations yet, because explanations are easy to build once people know which facts you have. I wanted the facts first. A clerk gave me a copy of the petition and every attachment that had been filed with it. Reading lies about yourself in black ink is different from hearing them spoken. Spoken lies can be denied, softened, blamed on emotion. Paper sits there and waits. According to Rachel, I had forgotten a dental appointment in May, become confused in a grocery store in June, left my pickup running in the driveway in July, and failed to understand the future disposition of my residence. Derek's affidavit described an incident on June 14, when I supposedly drove 20 miles in the wrong direction and called him because I couldn't find my way home. That date stopped me. June 14 was the annual dinner for Local 760, the electrical union, where I had apprenticed at 22. I had driven to Chattanooga that morning, stood on a stage that evening, and accepted a 40-year service plaque in front of nearly 200 people. There were photographs. There was video. I still had the hotel receipt. They had chosen a date when I was gone and turned my absence into evidence of confusion. The next claim was unpaid taxes. I pulled out my phone, opened my bank app, and found the county payment posted 11 months earlier. Then I found the line about my truck. Rachel wrote that I had backed into my mailbox and failed to remember doing it. I remembered the damaged mailbox very clearly because Derek had borrowed my truck to haul a compressor the same afternoon. He told me he clipped the post because he was looking at his phone. I had repaired it myself. By 9:30 that morning, I was sitting across from an elder law attorney named Marisol Bennett, a woman in her early 50s who read the petition without interrupting me. When she finished, she asked, "Do you have any reason to think your daughter genuinely believes you're impaired?" Yesterday, she told me to sleep in a motel while an evaluator sat at my dining table. That isn't what I asked. I appreciated the distinction. No. Rachel has watched me balance my accounts, repair equipment, drive alone, manage the property, and handle my own medical appointments. She knows exactly how capable I am. Marisol tapped the petition. Then we prove capability before we try to prove motive. That sentence settled me. She arranged an independent cognitive evaluation for the following morning, requested my primary care records with my permission, and told me to collect financial statements, tax receipts, vehicle records, phone location history, and anything establishing where I had been on the dates described. Do I confront them? I asked. Not yet. If somebody is exaggerating because they're frightened about your health, we'll learn that. If somebody is building a false record for another reason, I'd rather not teach them how to improve it. Before I left, Marisol asked whether my property had recently been appraised or surveyed. I told her about the map on my table. Her pen stopped. Did you order a survey? No. Did you give anyone permission to discuss selling the land? No. That afternoon I drove home after Rachel texted that their meeting was finished. Nobody was there. My key still opened the side door. The dining table had been cleared, but underneath a placemat I found a business card. Warren Fitch, Land Acquisition, Redfern Development Group. I photographed it without moving anything else. Then I walked the property. Near the back fence, half hidden by tall grass, were 3 bright orange survey stakes that had not been there the week before. I called the survey company printed on the plastic flag and gave them my parcel number. The receptionist became cautious as soon as I said I was the owner. She would not give me client details, but she confirmed that a boundary review had been requested. By me? I asked. The request came through a development consultant. Did anybody tell you I had agreed to sell? There was a pause. Sir, you should probably speak to whoever retained us. I called Warren Fitch next. The moment I gave him my name, his tone changed. Mr. Hale, I was under the impression your family was handling communications. Which family? Another pause. Your son-in-law. I looked out toward the back acreage. What exactly did Derek tell you? I'm not comfortable discussing a client conversation without authorization. It's my land. I understand. Then understand this. I have never agreed to sell 1 square foot of it. He became silent. Finally, he said, I think there has been a misunderstanding. That makes 2 of us. I hung up and called Marisol. She told me not to contact Fitch again. An hour later, she called back after speaking with his company's attorney. She could not give me every detail yet, but she gave me enough. Derek had represented that a family legal transition was underway, and that control of the property was expected to move to Rachel. Redfern had not signed a purchase contract with my daughter, but conversations about the land had advanced far enough for them to order preliminary work. Marisol then asked me a question that made the room feel smaller. Calvin, does Derek have financial trouble? I almost said everybody has financial trouble. Then I remembered the new excavator that disappeared from his job site in March, the calls he took outside, the envelope I once saw stamped final demand. Derek owned a grading company called Ridgeline Earthworks. He had expanded fast during the building boom, financing equipment and hiring crews, as if growth would last forever. For months, he told me business was tight, but turning around. I had never asked to see numbers because it was not my company. Now I wondered whether my 12 acres had become somebody else's balance sheet. That evening, Marisol searched public court filings and found a judgment against Ridgeline for unpaid equipment leases. Then another claim from a concrete supplier. Together they were north of $180,000. Suddenly my cognitive decline had a price tag. Over the next 4 days, every lie in Rachel's petition developed a shadow. My cognitive evaluation came back normal. Not good for my age. Normal. My doctor wrote that I showed no documented pattern of confusion and that I independently managed my medications and appointments. The property tax records proved every bill had been paid. My phone history placed me in Chattanooga on the night Derek claimed I had called him lost from a rural road outside Knoxville. Local 760 sent me photographs of myself at the banquet, grinning beside men I had worked with for decades. Even the mailbox story unraveled when I remembered the camera mounted above my workshop. I had installed it years earlier after copper wire disappeared from the barn. It faced the driveway, workshop entrance, and part of the side yard. The recording from July showed Derek backing my pickup into the mailbox at 3:17 in the afternoon, climbing out, staring at the dent, and kicking the broken post. I watched the clip 3 times, not because I needed to, but because I was beginning to understand how carefully they had built their version of me. They had not invented random stories. They had taken real events and moved responsibility from themselves onto me. The mailbox had been damaged, so they said I did it. I had been away June 14, so they said I was lost. Rachel once reminded me about a dental appointment I had rescheduled, so they said I forgot it. Truth was not their enemy. Truth was raw material. On the 5th day, Marisol called and told me Brookhaven Senior Living had responded to a request for records concerning me. Rachel had toured the facility twice. She had placed a refundable deposit on a 1-bedroom apartment in my name and listed herself as the financial contact. The proposed move-in date was 6 weeks away. I sat at my kitchen table after that call and stared at Elaine's empty chair. I could understand a child worrying about an aging parent. I could even understand Rachel wanting a plan for some future day when I genuinely needed help. But you do not reserve a room for a capable man. Tell a court he cannot manage himself and survey his land because you are worried. You do it because you have already decided where he belongs. That afternoon, Derek came home carrying 2 grocery bags. How was your day? He asked. Productive. You still mad about the other night? Should I be? He put milk in the refrigerator and shrugged. Rachel's under a lot of stress. We're trying to make things easier for everybody. Everybody? You know what I mean. I watched him avoid my eyes. How's Ridgeline? I asked. His hand stopped for half a second. Fine. Equipment situation sorted out? What equipment situation? Just asking. He gave me a smile that arrived too slowly. Business always has ups and downs. Then he added, actually, once things settle around here, I think we'll all be in a better position. There was that word. Around here. My house. My land. My future. I said nothing. After he went upstairs, I checked the workshop camera archive farther back. Rachel knew about the outdoor camera, but she apparently believed its view ended at the driveway. It also caught the side entrance to my office. 3 weeks earlier, while I was at a dental cleaning, Rachel and Derek came through that door carrying the small fireproof box I kept beneath my desk. They had a key, because I had given Rachel 1 year before for emergencies. The recording showed them taking the box into the workshop, where the camera could see part of the bench. Derek removed documents and held several beneath the overhead light, while Rachel photographed them with her phone. I recognized the thick cream paper of my deed. I recognized the county parcel map. I recognized the folder containing Elaine's death certificate and my estate documents. 15 minutes later, they put everything back. There was no audio, but Rachel laughed at something Derek showed her on his screen. I saved the recording to 2 drives and drove one directly to Marisol's office. She watched in silence. They had permission to enter your office? She asked. For an emergency. Not to photograph my deed. Do they have access to your financial accounts? No. Credit? Not that I know of. She looked at me. Then today you freeze your credit. Change every financial password. Add verbal security codes to the bank. And move original property documents somewhere they cannot reach. Quietly. That was the first time in the entire mess I felt something close to relief. Not because I knew what they were doing, but because I was doing something too. By 5 that afternoon, my accounts had new passwords, my credit files were frozen, and the originals from my fireproof box were locked in a bank safe deposit box. Rachel and Derek still had the house code. They still had the office key. They still believed I was moving through my ordinary life. What they did not know was that the man they were trying to have declared incapable had spent the day protecting everything they hoped to control. A week before the hearing, the reason for their urgency finally arrived in writing. Marisol asked me to come to her office and place 3 printed emails on the table. Redfern Development had voluntarily turned them over after its attorney realized the landowner had never authorized negotiations. The first email was from Derek to Warren Fitch. It described my acreage as a family parcel expected to become available after a pending care transition. The second attached a preliminary sketch for 22 townhomes. The third was the one that made me stop reading halfway through. Derek wrote that Rachel was pursuing temporary authority because her father has become unable to make rational property decisions, and that once she had legal control, they expected to seek approval to move forward with a breath. Sale. Redfern had discussed a possible purchase price of $1.46 million, subject to zoning and legal authority. Beside that number, Derek had written that proceeds would give the family room to resolve several business obligations. Marisol let me sit with it. He planned to use my land to pay Ridgeline's debts. That appears to be one motive. One? She slid another page toward me. It was an email Rachel had sent Brookhaven. In it, my daughter asked whether the facility could hold the apartment if the court process takes slightly longer than expected. She explained that her father was resistant because he doesn't understand how much easier this will be for everyone once the house is sold. I read that line again. For everyone. Elaine used to say Rachel could convince herself of anything if she called it practical. I had defended our daughter when Elaine said that. I called Rachel determined, responsible, strong. Now I saw how those qualities looked when they stopped recognizing another person's boundary. Maybe Derek pushed her into it, I said, and I hated how much I needed the possibility. Marisol didn't answer immediately. Maybe, she said, but Rachel signed the petition. People sign things when they're scared. They do. Derek's company is failing. It is. She may think she's saving him. Marisol folded her hands. Calvin, protecting your daughter from facts is not the same as protecting your daughter. I looked away. Even then, part of me wanted Derek to be the architect and Rachel to be the frightened wife who had gone along too far. I could imagine forgiving weakness more easily than betrayal. That evening, Rachel made meatloaf, the same recipe her mother used, and placed a plate in front of me without being asked. "You've seemed tired," she said. "Have I?" "A little. Anything else wrong with me?" Her eyes moved toward Derek. "Dad, please don't start. I'm eating dinner." She sat across from me. "We're trying to help you stay safe." "Safe from what?" "From something happening when nobody's here." I looked around the table. "You're here almost every day." "That isn't the point." Derek jumped in. "Calvin, nobody is taking anything from you." I almost smiled at the precision of his wording. "Not yet." Rachel reached for my hand. "Mom would want us to take care of you." That was the first moment I nearly lost my temper. Elaine had been dead 4 years, and they had brought her into this as if she had left instructions to remove me from my own home. I pulled my hand away slowly. "Do not use your mother to win an argument she isn't here to answer." Rachel looked wounded. "Good. Some lines are supposed to hurt when you cross them." Then she took a breath and said, "The evaluator may want to speak with you again before next week." "Fine. And we need the house Saturday morning. Derek's parents are coming over, and Warren may stop by." I kept my face blank. "Warren?" Derek answered too quickly. "A business contact." Rachel looked at him. He looked at her. There it was, small but visible. They did not know I knew Warren Fitch. "What time?" I asked. 9, Rachel said. "It might be easier if you went out for a few hours. These conversations get you agitated." I nodded. "I can be somewhere else." The tension left both their faces. After dinner, I called Marisol. She listened, then asked, "Do you want them out of the house before the hearing? I want to know exactly what they plan to say when they think I'm not listening." She was quiet for a moment. "Then don't be there Saturday morning." I thought she meant, let them have their meeting. Instead, she said, "Be across the street." My neighbor, Vernon Pike, had known me for 20 years and had a clear view of my front drive from his upstairs office. Saturday at 8:45, I parked my truck behind his detached garage. At 9, Derek's parents arrived. At 9 to 10, Warren Fitch pulled up but stayed only 6 minutes. At 9:20, a white SUV marked Senior Transition Services parked in my driveway. At 9:30, Rachel texted me, "Hope you're having a good morning. We're just talking through options." At 9:47, my workshop camera sent a motion alert. I opened the feed. Derek was standing at my workbench with a folder. Rachel came in behind him. She looked toward the door and said something I couldn't hear. Derek opened the folder and held up a document. Then Rachel did something that stripped away the last excuse I had been saving for her. She picked up my signature stamp. Years earlier, after arthritis made repetitive paperwork painful, my office manager had ordered a rubber stamp of my signature for internal work orders. I had stopped using it after retirement and tossed it into a drawer. Rachel pressed it against a blank sheet, examined the mark, then pressed it again. She knew exactly where it was because she had photographed the contents of that room weeks earlier. I felt Vernon standing behind me. "You want me to call somebody?" he asked. "Not yet." I recorded the entire feed. Derek took the stamp from Rachel, slipped it into his pocket, and they left the workshop. I called Marisol. For the first time since we met, she swore. Then she said, "Now we stop waiting." The hearing was Monday morning. Rachel arrived in a navy dress, carrying a thick folder. Derek sat behind her with his arms crossed. When she saw Marisol beside me, her expression tightened. "Dad, you hired a lawyer? You asked a court for control of my life? That isn't what this is. Then the judge can tell me what it is." We went inside. I had never been the subject of a court hearing before, and I hope never to be again. There is something deeply unsettling about sitting quietly while people discuss whether you are capable of choosing where you live, what you own, and who handles your money. Rachel's attorney began gently. He described a concerned daughter trying to protect an aging father after the loss of his wife. He referenced forgetfulness, unsafe driving, unpaid obligations, emotional volatility. If I had heard the story without knowing the man involved, I might have felt sorry for Rachel. Then Marisol stood. She started with the simplest lie. Property taxes. Paid on time, with bank confirmation. The next lie was June 14. She handed the judge photographs from my union banquet, the hotel bill, and location data. Mr. Hale was not lost near Knoxville that evening, she said. He was 100 miles away receiving a service award in front of approximately 200 witnesses. Derek shifted behind Rachel. Then came the mailbox. The courtroom monitor showed Derek backing my truck into the post. A few people looked toward him. He stared at the floor. Then, Marisol submitted my independent cognitive evaluation and medical records. The judge read for several minutes before looking at Rachel. Your petition describes substantial progressive impairment. The independent evaluator found no evidence supporting that description. Rachel's lawyer said family observations could differ from clinical testing. The judge agreed. Then Marisol moved to motive. She showed Redfern's emails. Derek's shoulders went rigid. The number $1.46 million appeared on the screen beside the proposed development sketch of my land. Rachel turned around and whispered something to him. The judge asked whether she had discussed selling my property with Redfern. Not formally, Rachel said. Marisol handed up the Brookhaven emails. Did you reserve housing for your father before filing this petition? Rachel hesitated. I was exploring options. Did you tell Brookhaven the house would be sold? Eventually, yes. Had your father agreed? He wasn't being realistic. I felt that sentence more than I expected. Marisol let the silence sit before asking. Realistic? About what? Rachel's composure cracked. About the fact that he's almost 70 and sitting on a house and land worth more than he could ever use. Derek's company is struggling. We have bills. Dad lives alone in a 4-bedroom house on 12 acres. None of it makes sense. The judge leaned forward. Miss Mercer, whose property is it? Rachel swallowed. My father's. Then whether you believe his ownership makes sense is irrelevant to whether he lacks capacity. Rachel's attorney put a hand on her arm, but she had begun talking too fast. I wasn't trying to steal from him. The land is going to come to me someday anyway. We were trying to protect the value before he made some impulsive decision. There it was, spoken aloud in a courtroom. Someday. The same assumption hiding beneath every key, every survey stake, every meeting I had been asked to leave. Marisol then introduced the workshop footage from Saturday. Rachel testing my signature stamp, Derek putting it in his pocket. Their attorney objected to what it implied. Marisol did not accuse them of forging a document that had never been filed. She did not need to. She simply asked why people claiming to protect an incapacitated man had removed his signature stamp from his private office 2 days before a court hearing. Derek finally stood. That was my idea. Rachel turned toward him. Sit down, her attorney whispered. Derek ignored him. Rachel didn't know what I planned to do with it. My daughter looked at him with pure disbelief. Don't you dare. The room changed. Derek stared at her. I'm trying to help you. By making me look like an idiot? You brought the stamp into the workshop because you told me we needed samples for the property paperwork. Marisol did not interrupt. Neither did the judge. The truth was beginning to arrive without assistance. Derek said, You filed the petition. Rachel's face went white. Because you told me we were going to lose everything. We were going to lose everything. Your company was going to lose everything. And you wanted your father's land just as much as I did. I closed my eyes for 1 second. There was the answer I had been trying not to find. Rachel looked toward me. Dad, that isn't what I meant. Did you know Derek was negotiating with Redfern? I asked. Her attorney objected to me speaking directly, but the judge allowed Rachel to answer. She nodded. Yes. Did you know Brookhaven had a room reserved for me? Yes. Did you believe I was incapable of living alone? Her mouth opened, then closed. I thought you'd fight any change. That wasn't my question. Tears filled her eyes. No. Derek whispered her name. Rachel shook her head and looked at me. No, Dad. I didn't think you were incompetent. That answer hurt worse than the petition. If she had truly believed I was failing, I could have forgiven fear. Instead, she had known I was capable and tried to have my capability taken from me because my answer about my property was inconvenient. The judge denied the request for temporary control. He ordered the disputed allegations and workshop footage preserved and made clear that any further attempt to interfere with my property or finances could create consequences far beyond a family disagreement. He did not give Rachel a speech about gratitude. He did not need to. Before leaving, he looked at her and said, "A future inheritance is not a present ownership interest." I watched my daughter lower her head. Outside the courtroom, Derek approached me first. "Calvin, I can explain the business situation." "I don't care about your business situation. If Ridgeline goes down, Rachel goes down with me." "Then you should have protected your wife by telling her the truth about your company, not by teaching her my house was an emergency fund." His face hardened. "You have enough to help." I almost laughed. After everything, he still believed the amount I had was more important than the fact that I had said no. "That sentence is why you're leaving my property," I said. Rachel stared at me. "Dad, both of you. I'll have your things packed. You can arrange a time to collect them." "You're throwing me out?" she asked. "No. I'm ending an arrangement that should have ended a year ago." "Where are we supposed to go?" I looked at my daughter, the same girl whose first apartment deposit I had paid, whose college tuition Elaine and I had covered, whose wedding reception had filled my backyard with white chairs, and I realized how often love had trained her to expect rescue. "You're 41 years old, Rachel. Figuring that out is part of getting your life back." The locksmith arrived at 8 the next morning. His name was Hank Dobson, and I knew him from commercial jobs years earlier. He replaced the electronic keypad, installed a new deadbolt, changed the side door cylinder, and removed Rachel's administrator account from the smart home system. Then we changed the lock on my office and the workshop. I found the old signature stamp in the pocket of a jacket Derek had left over a chair. He must have returned it after the hearing, hoping I would not notice. I cut it into pieces with tin snips and dropped them into the trash. The house felt strange after Rachel and Derek left, quieter than it had been in 18 months, but not empty. I had confused noise with company for too long. 3 days later, Ridgeline's largest lender repossessed another machine. Within a month, Derek shut down the company. I did not pay the judgment. I did not refinance my land. I did not sell the back acreage. Redfern sent me a polite letter confirming it had ended, all discussions concerning the parcel. Brookhaven refunded Rachel's deposit directly to the card she had used. Marisol helped me update my estate documents, but I did not cut my daughter out. That surprised her when she eventually learned it. I changed the structure instead. No one could use my estate as collateral, count on it to solve current debts, or treat it as money already received. What Rachel might inherit someday would remain my decision until the day I was no longer here to make one. 6 weeks after the hearing, she came to the house alone. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped onto the porch and entered the old keypad code. Nothing happened. She tried again. The little light flashed red. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out the old key. It turned halfway and stopped. I walked to the door but did not open it immediately. For months I had imagined how satisfying that moment might feel. It didn't. She was still my daughter. A new lock does not erase 41 years of birthdays, scraped knees, Christmas mornings, arguments, hospital rooms, and everything in between. I opened the door, but stayed in the doorway. Rachel looked at the deadbolt, then at me. "You changed everything." "Yes. Can I come in?" I thought about the night she told me to leave my own house because strangers needed privacy to plan my future. Then I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "We can talk out here." She nodded as though she had expected that. For a while, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, "I keep hearing myself in that courtroom." "So do I. I told myself you weren't using the land. I told myself Derek would lose his company, and we'd lose our house, and you could fix it without really losing anything. I would have lost the right to decide. I know." "Do you?" She looked down. "I thought because I was your daughter, what was yours was eventually mine." I didn't say it like that in my head, but that's what I believed. "And the conservatorship?" Her eyes filled. "That was worse. I knew you weren't confused. I knew you could manage everything. I convinced myself the court would just give me enough authority to force a practical decision. A decision you wanted. Yes. About my life. Yes. I did not rescue her from the word. She needed to hear herself say it. Then she told me she and Derek were separated. I didn't celebrate that either. Their marriage was theirs to repair or end. She had rented a small apartment and taken a job with a medical billing company. For the first time since college, she said, there was nobody between her and the consequences of her choices. I'm sorry, Dad. I believe you're sorry. Can you forgive me? I looked through the front window at Elaine's photograph on the hallway table. I can love you while I'm angry. I can forgive you before I trust you. Those things don't have to happen on the same day. Rachel nodded. Then she glanced at the lock. I guess I don't get another key. Not today. She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. Fair. Over the next several months, we started with coffee in town. Then lunch. Eventually, she came over on Sundays, but she knocked. Every time. I never told her she had to. She simply did. One afternoon, she helped me clear brush along the back fence where the orange survey stakes had once stood. We found the last one beneath a patch of blackberry vines. Rachel pulled it out of the ground and held it for a second. Want me to throw this away? She asked. I took it from her, snapped the plastic flag off, and tossed it into the truck bed. Yeah. She looked across the acreage. You really never wanted to sell? Maybe someday I will. She smiled faintly. Your decision. Exactly. That was the first time I believed she understood. I still have the same house. I still have the same 12 acres. I still have a daughter, though our relationship is different now. The old keypad is gone, the survey stakes are gone, and Derek no longer walks into my barn as if my tools came with his marriage certificate. Sometimes people ask whether changing the locks was cruel. I don't think it was. A lock is not revenge. It is a boundary you can touch. I had spent years believing that giving family access proved I trusted them. And maybe it did. What I failed to remember was that access is not ownership, help is not surrender, and love does not require you to hand somebody the controls to your life just because they may inherit what remains when you're gone. The night Rachel kept me outside my own door, I thought the worst thing a child could do was make her father feel unwelcome in the house he paid for. I was wrong. The worst betrayal was believing she had the right to decide when the house stopped being mine. Months later, when she finally stood on that porch and knocked, instead of reaching for a key, I understood something too. I did not need my daughter to fear me, owe me, or agree with every choice I made. I only needed her to recognize where her life ended and mine began. When I opened the door that Sunday and invited her inside, it was not because she had a key. It was because, little by little, she was earning back the trust that made a key mean something in the first place.